Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 29, and a really exciting one today. My guest today is Shiv Chandrakantshah, who is the CEO and founder of a company called ImmiLytics. ImmiLytics is a data analysis immigration company that effectively allows people to mine immigration data that basically currently isn't being mined right now. It's a super interesting and fascinating aspect of immigration technology. I mean, we talk a lot about immigration case management and all sorts of other tech tools within the immigration industry. And of course, data is part of the conversation. But with Shiv and with ImmiLytics, they really dive into data deeper than probably anybody else. So I'm really excited to chat with Shiv today, find out about how he built ImmiLytics, his whole journey to becoming a founder of an immigration tech company, and see what we can learn. I'm Roman Zelchenko, your host. I am a former immigration lawyer, though I guess once an immigration lawyer, always an immigration lawyer. I'm the founder of Laborless, an immigration tech startup as well that automates H1B compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which brings you this show. So Shiv, thank you so much for joining and for sharing your time. And I'm really excited to hear and learn more about you and share your story.
Thanks, Roman. Thanks for having me on the show. And I'm equally excited. And I must say, I love your show. Over the last 28 episodes, I probably missed one, maybe, but loved it. Every single one. There was so much learning, inspiration, motivation. I can keep going on and on, but thank you once again for having me on the show.
I appreciate that very much. There's a little bit of feedback coming from your mic. It's okay, no worries, but I don't know if you've... Do you want to try that again real quick?
Is it better now?
It's like crackling a little bit.
No, I can't hear. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's better. And
Okay.
while we're doing that, for folks who are out there, shout yourself out. Tell us where you're calling in from and watching from. I'd love to take questions and as we talk through this discussion. So shout yourself out and let's be part of the conversation. So Shiv, can you just say something and we'll see.
Is it better now?
Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Awesome. Thanks. When you go live, it's like little technical difficulties always come up. I think I remember my first live stream I did with Ben Cross. Shout out to Ben here on LinkedIn. And I think during the conversation, his entire internet cut out and he went blank and I was by myself and I didn't know if the show was still going. And I think someone texted me and they were like, Roman, you're still live. And I was just sitting there. and so I had to put on a song and dance while the host, I wasn't the host, I was the guest, while the host of the show was, fixing it. So anyway, it happens.
Well, hope that's not today.
Yeah, no, definitely not today. No, it sounds perfect now. So Shiv, while folks are going to start coming in with some questions and things, I wanted to get started. You and I know each other. We've known each other for a while, and I've had the opportunity to talk to you on many occasions about many different projects, around immigration technology. And it's been so cool to watch the growth of ImmiLytics. I know a little bit about your story. I'm sure others do too in the industry since you know so many people. But I think something that we don't often talk about, just generally speaking, is like our journey prior to starting our career or prior to falling into the industry that we're at. And I think with you particularly, it's an interesting one because you are an immigrant too. I mean, you came to the U.S. You had a whole life you were from India. You had a whole life in India. You went to law school there, and then you came into the U.S. and started really in the immigration space right away. But I would love if you could share. I mean, some little bit about your life before you came to the U.S. You went to law school. You had this whole adult sort of life. What was it like for you as a kid? Did you always want to get into business? Were you interested in law? Like, what were you kind of like as a kid?
I was on the streets pretty much, playing cricket, soccer, never at home. Loved to be outdoors always. And of course, they reflected my grades, sure. But then I decided at some point I've got to change, started doing a little more studying, focusing on education, decided to be a lawyer, just like so many aspiring lawyers. And then in my fourth year, a year before my final year, I did my internship with an attorney. And then I realized, no, this is not cut out for me. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I want to be more on the operations side, basically because of how I'm wired. So I went ahead and finished my law and then joined the corporate world. So right out of college, I went and joined a corporate job. And part of that, I was still doing legal related work like corporate legal, real estate legal, but then stayed within that space. And then eventually I moved away from legal and got into more of operations. And finally, when I left India, my last couple of jobs before that was with on the credit and collection side. So it was all number crunching, and as you can imagine, cash flow. And my last job was with the Tata Group of companies, one of the companies. So it was pretty exciting, and I would have never left India, honestly. I wouldn't have come if not for my wife. She actually came to the US in 2000 on a H1. So I came to join her, and when she said, this is a great opportunity, I want to go. And I said, sure. I mean, not everybody gets that opportunity to come. So I'm going to let you go, but I can promise you that I will stay. I'm going to come for the initial period of my H4, and then we can decide. And even before I started to come here, things were processing in my head from an immigration standpoint. It's like, what would it be like to get a work visa? I don't have US experience. So how am I going to find a job? And leave alone finding a job, now I have to find a sponsor. But then I said, we'll figure it out, let's go. And that's how I left and came to the US on a H4. And of course, it was pretty challenging, honestly. The first few months, it was like getting used to the culture, looking at how pretty and just enjoying US. And then 4 months later, I'm like, I can't sit idle. I want to do something. And when I started my job search, sure enough, there were challenges like, do you have US experience? No, I don't. Then do you have sponsorship? So I was kind of a little frustrated at that point, but then I said, I'm not going to give up, and I continued. But luck would have it, and that I must say, I'm a pretty lucky guy throughout my career, my life. I'm thankful and I'm blessed. What happened was, my wife being in IT, I was actually looking for a project because her project was coming to an end. So I was connecting through my contacts to try and find her a job. And in the process, I ended up talking to my boss from India, his brother in the US, and he happened to be in Atlanta running an IT company. And I ended up talking to him to find a project for my wife, and instead got an opportunity to get hired and join them and do H1s for them. And that's how my journey started. I'm like, I didn't expect this. It came out of nowhere. They sponsored my H, and I handled their H1Bs internally and worked with outside counsel to do all the green card related work. And that's how my career started. I was stunned, and I'm like, thank God, it just happened.
Wow. And at that time, H4s did not have an EAD, right?
No.
So when you came here, when your wife came here in H1B and you came in on H4, you effectively, in your mind, said, I'm taking a break. I have to take a break from my career because you can't work when you're here in the US.
That's right.
What was that? You hear now, you take for granted, although I guess the H4 EAD has been really kind of on the chopping block for a little while, or at least it was previously. I think people take for granted the fact that before there was no EAD for H4 spouses. What was that? I don't know. What was it like for you? I guess you had a career, you were a lawyer. You had to make some sort of a calculation to say, this is worth it for me to take a break from work.
Yeah. So I had decided, like I said, 2 years. I'm going to give it 2 years and not worry about not finding a job, but make my best effort to find one. But if that didn't happen, I was always happy to go back and find another way until I'm able to come back. So it kind of worked out with this job, so I didn't have to worry too much. Thank God.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Did you, when you came here on an H, or when your wife came here on an H and you did the H4, I'm just curious, did her employers, lawyers kind of help you with that? Did you all, did you and her have any part in that process?
No. I just submitted my paperwork, and then it was all handled by the attorneys. So no, I wasn't involved.
Sounds like a nice deal. Nowadays, you have 15 people working on an H1B just because of denial rates and RFEs and all this kind of thing.
That's right. And the approvals came in pretty fast too, so I didn't have to wait long. So my H1, I got on the cap the following year, and then it just came through, and I just got lucky.
Wow. That's amazing.
So that's how I started. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that we just wanted to shout out a few people. Nathaniel from California. Hey, Nathaniel, thanks for jumping in. We've got Stephanie Paul from Atlanta. Hey, Stephanie. We've got Kyle and Michelle watching. Hey, Kyle and Michelle, thanks for joining in. And we also have Jessica calling from Denver.
Hi, Jessica.
I forgot you're in Denver. Oh my God, it must be so nice there right now. All my friends who are out there skiing and snowboarding, it looks so beautiful. Thank you for joining. We have Prasanna Kumar, who is also an Indian national looking for an immigration role. So you've come to the right place of a lot of immigration folks here. And we've also got Nicola from Germany. Thanks for chiming in.
Hey, Nicola.
Appreciate everybody. Anyone else who's watching, shout us out as we get going. Think about some questions that you would want to ask Shiv, especially once we start talking more about ImmiLytics, and we can sort of dive into that. So Shiv, I guess all right. So you're here in the U.S. You've got this awesome opportunity that came your way. It's kind of funny. You were looking for a job for your wife, and then the person's like, "Hey, actually, we need you to come in and help us." And you came in. So you started. It sounds like you started helping them internally as sort of like an in-house immigration.
That's right.
You were an attorney, but were you doing? You weren't barred here, I guess, so you couldn't practice. Like, how did that look for you?
So at that point, I was pretty much working like a paralegal or a legal assistant in an in-house environment, and I was preparing the paperwork, all forms and LCAs, and I had a manager that was well versed with that, and he would obviously review and sign. I was just doing the work at that point. I was happy to get started somewhere and stay busy. So it was, that's how I started, and I didn't, obviously, with no license, I couldn't practice or do anything. So it was interesting. And there was so much learning, and I was able to relate to my own immigration situation. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
at that point, that company had about 200 some foreign nationals that they were supporting, IT foreign nationals. So it was quite a bit of work and their dependents. So it was a great experience starting out there, learning about all these nuances of H1Bs, H4s, public access files, and it was fun. Yep.
And you got to see it from the other side, because here you were previously doing it, going through the process yourself, and now you're sort of helping folks come in. Did you, was this company, did it have a lot of individuals coming in from India as IT workers?
Predominantly.
Okay. And
it was mixed, diverse, but predominantly India, yes.
Got it. Okay. And did you ever interface with the folks? Like, did they ever say, okay, Shiv, you went through this process, these people have a question or something, did they ever do that? Or was it more like just the legal side and the paperwork and things like that?
No, just the legal side. Obviously, I was also new to the system, and they were also getting used to the fact that they had, and I don't think they had a full-time in-house person previously.
Oh, wow.
So, other than my manager who was managing it earlier. So, yeah, no, there was very limited interaction.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was just curious, because I know that sometimes when I speak to, especially immigration lawyers, yes, people want to know when their forms are going to be processed and things like that, but there's also a big emotional aspect to it. People have questions. What's it going to be like? So, yeah, it's I think that customer service piece in immigration is really interesting.
That's right. Yeah.
So, okay. So you had this job, and you had this job for a number of years, I guess, before you landed your first role at an immigration law firm, proper, if you will.
Right. So actually, I was there for about 2-3 years. And of course, 9/11 happened. I came in 2000, 9/11 happened. This business was impacted because of that. And so all the H1Bs, the number of H1Bs reduced. So at some point I had to move on. So I moved to a boutique firm based out of Texas, and they had an presence here in Atlanta, and I managed that office for about 3 years. Wow. And then I realized that I wasn't necessarily learning a lot and growing because of the size of the office. And I decided I wanted to move into a more high volume business immigration experience. So, and then I was in the market. And thank God, and I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to Leah Thompson with Platinum Staffing Inc., based out of Atlanta. If it was not for her, I would not have found my first break. And the first break was with Ogletree Deacons, large firm, first hand. So it's like, thank you. And my life changed after that.
Wow.
And here I am, 15 years later, and for all practical purposes, Ogletree is a foundation to what I am doing now in so many ways. So thank you, Leah, if you're watching. I just wanted to give you a shout out. And that's how I started my career with a larger firm. And interestingly, what I was hired to do at Ogletree was a combination, even though I did paralegal work first in the US, but I was hired to primarily take their in-house, the office that I was moving into, that team from a legacy system, legacy case management system to a third-party vendor system. Mm-hmm. And with some IT background that I had, and I was able to coordinate and be the link between the vendor and the in-house team on questions, training, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing I was hired to do. And two, given my background in collections, data, and credit coming from India, I was hired to help streamline their billing process. And immigration, as you can imagine, with a mix of flat fee and hourly, very easily it could be complex. And so that was the second piece of why I was hired. And of course, third, to do paralegal work. So the first 2 to 3 years, I was focused on the transition to the case management system. And then, of course, streamlining billing processes. And then I got on to full-time paralegal work. And I pretty much touched all types of cases, right from a simple 765 to perm cases and everything in between, minus any hard writing type projects. I pretty much done everything. And I'm glad I did that, because that is experience that I'm currently using. And I'm able to talk the language between what an attorney needs and what the developers have to do. Otherwise, things are lost in translation. And as you know, and having your own startup, business requirements, translating them into code, you need to have that link. And boy, am I glad that I did all that work. So now I know the nuances of each of the processes, what goes in, and how easy or hard it is to build that.
That's fascinating. When you joined Ogletree, it sounds like you had to do this kind of case management transition. I mean, I imagine you worked with some case management platform at the boutique firm. But were you like confident in the technology, on the technology side of things? Because, you were a lawyer and then you did some of the immigration work at this company. Before that, you were doing sort of finance related work. Did you just say like, yeah, I'll figure it out? Or did you kind of feel, were you more tech savvy already, where you could come in and say, great, Ogletree, I'm going to help you, transition case management platforms, et cetera?
Well, it's a combination. I was confident. And given my analytical thinking and background, I always get to the bottom until I figure it out. Yes, it could be frustrating when at times you don't get to it right away, but I was always persistent in trying to figure out. So I learn. I'm a hands-on guy. More than reading and learning, I do things repetitively over and over again until I figure things out. So that came in handy. And with my analytical skills, I was pretty confident, was able to do it. And process. I look at everything as a process and map it out and say, what's the logical? Where is it supposed to go? What's supposed to happen? And if I didn't know, I would ask questions. So I wasn't intimidated with the system or the technology. And where I didn't know, I learned.
I love that. And, the reason I asked that question is because immigration tech is a growing field. Everyone's using it. Everyone's been using it. But I think it's always been sort of that thing that you have to do as part of your job. Whereas now technology is really becoming more of a central focus across the entire immigration industry and really around the world, not just in the US or North America. But I think a lot of maybe lawyers or just others that are in the industry maybe feel intimidated and say like, oh, I could never work at an immigration technology company, or, I can't take on another platform at my firm. I'm never going to be able to learn it, et cetera. And that might hold them back. And so I was, I'm interested to hear about sort of how individuals transition. I mean, I myself came from, to be fair, I built websites when I was 12 years old. So I understood, I wasn't intimidated by computers, but I by no means am a developer, right? Or any sort of technical person. But I think to your point, if you can understand that a computer just is the language of the computer boils down to logic. So if you're a logical person, you can think logically and you could structure things and break them down. Nothing to be afraid of. Technology is a tool for us to use, just like a hammer or a wrench or a frying pan, right? So, I appreciate that. And I think it's cool to know that, you kind of said, yeah, I'll figure it out. I know it's the right thing to do. And it's a good, step for my career. And obviously it brought you to where you are today. So you stayed at Ogletree for some time. And then I guess you left for a little bit as well. But you kind of stayed in this immigration kind of business analyst type of technology and business role, right?
Right. So after I was with Ogletree from 2006 until 2013. So good 6 years before I moved to Microsoft. But after the first initial years at Ogletree, what happened was I had the opportunity to be able to expand my portfolio and move into other areas while I continued to do legal work as and when needed. I started supporting client reporting and data, and not so much analytics at that point, but the whole reporting itself. And I was happy because my background and my passion for data and analytics, that was a perfect platform for me to learn. And then slowly my position grew and I started supporting Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. Larger companies, I would get involved in onboarding, I would get involved in annual business review, analytics, I would get involved with day-to-day reporting. So that role transitioned that way. And in fact, it was in that role, I was supporting a large tech company, in fact, Microsoft for the matter, and I earned the gold standard for an SLA report I did back in 2011. This is like 10 years ago, right? Almost. And SLAs were limited in how they were done at that point, if they were. So I came up with this, again, logically thinking what's needed, and I built this, and I was like, this is great. This is something we're looking for. And things like that motivated me to do more. And I just kept at the data analytics side, and my role transitioned into a complete data and data analytics until I left for Microsoft.
Wow, that's fascinating. I think that also goes to the lesson of you can be intrapreneurial too. If you have the ideas and you work for a company that will support you, just suggest things and take opportunities internally.
And I would like to mention there, though, just every job that I've had to date, I've had nothing but great managers. They challenged me at every point, and that created opportunities for me to learn and get better and also expand my horizon and other things that I can do. So thanks to all my managers, I couldn't have, and I wouldn't have been here if not for you.
I love that. People make work, right?
That's right.
It's not just the work. So you moved in-house to Microsoft. So it sounds like you were supporting them too. Did it kind of happen because you were working with them already and you knew them a little bit and you transitioned into that team? How was that experience going from a law firm to in-house?
To your first point, I believe so. That probably had a role to play because I was actively involved in managing the Microsoft account and responsible for processes, reporting, and that transitioned, and I ended up being there. So I'm assuming that is it. Yeah. And I kind of welcome that because I don't know, I'm not an IT guy by background. I'm not a super whiz kid that I would have ever dreamed of that I will be at Microsoft. Even there are days today, I sit back and think, wow, how did I make that happen? Right? It was all the opportunities created, hard work, and I just put in my part, but that's one highlight in my personal life to say that I made it in spite of not being an IT guy. And I welcomed that. And boy, was it great. I just enjoyed every minute that I was there. Such great team, excellent brains in terms of attorneys, and of course, IT powerhouse. You can ask for anything better. So it was a great combination, great exposure for me being there. So I enjoyed every minute of being there. And of course, I welcome that.
And so what do you think are, like, I know you previously worked at in a tech company doing immigration. Obviously it was a smaller shop versus Microsoft. Microsoft's massive. They have a big immigration program. What were some of the things that you kind of, what was your experience like there? What were some of the things that you found, maybe things you learned that you eventually took away with you?
Mm-hmm. So it's data all along, right? And while I was at Ogletree in a law firm environment, a high volume environment, I got to see what it means to be able to provide data on demand, right? So several clients are asking, the needs are different. So it gave me that perspective. So we're always looking at, from a law firm perspective, how do we get this? But I really didn't get the opportunity to look at how is this data being consumed by these companies when we provide it. And I'll be honest, I mean, I've had comments and I've talked to myself, I'm like, why does this company want this data? How are they going to use it? I'm having to go through all this trouble and I'll talk about the trouble part of the data. But I'm having to go through how are they using this data. But when I had the opportunity to work in-house, my perspective changed, and I was able to see, I get it. Now I know why they're asking for data like this. It's not about I want data, but they take the data and translate into something internal, because they're looking at customer service, turnaround times internally to their foreign national population to improve their processes. So all of a sudden it gave me this perspective that, oh, now I get it. And I came a full circle. I was able to see high volume law firm side of things, and then the in-house tech side of things, and how decisions are made based on the data that they get, and they have to be made fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's how that helped me.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, because you're starting to see what business decisions come out of the immigration data that they're collecting, and it's hard to really intuit that. You have to either ask or you have to work there and see what are the trickle down effects. I mean, even if you asked at the law firm, you asked Microsoft or whoever the client was, hey, what do you do with the data? Maybe they'll tell you the first 2 or 3 things. But when you work there, you can see all of the downstream effects of the decisions made upon that data, how it affects employees, how it affects maybe a hiring strategy, et cetera. So that's super, super fascinating. I wanted to take one just pause here. We have Sandeep Verma says, hi, Shiv and Roman.
Hey, Sandeep.
Hi there. And then Stephen Parker as well.
Stephen.
Good to see people here. We've got Nicola asked a question. I guess made a note. I always feel amazed by those who left the country, the comfort of their own homes, and everything they hold dear and love to start anew in a new country. Not everyone can do this, and it's not always and right away for the better. There are many ups and downs. So I think absolutely. From an immigrant, the immigrant journey is never easy. Even when you come in on a work visa and you're coming into a maybe a comfortable job with a comfortable salary, that money does not mean ease, and money does not mean necessarily comfort. So I appreciate that. Stephanie Paul said, great managers are essential. Totally, right? I mean, like, you could be doing the most interesting work, but if you don't feel appreciated and you don't feel like you can grow, you don't feel like people are out to support you and help you, at least to some extent, you go to work every day, 40, 50 hours a week. I mean, these people how can you allow yourself to work in an environment where people aren't great? So I think managers are essential. Absolutely. And then the last thing Nicola says here, there's no doing great work in this industry without data and technology. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I guess, Shiv, I wanted to, jump ahead a little bit. You worked at Microsoft, you had this amazing experience and all these insights about, how important data is. You then go back to the law firm world, right? Before you break off on your own. So I'm really interested about this, because in my mind, if we stop the conversation right now and you would ask me, what was Shiv's next step? I would say, well, you worked in a high volume law practice. Then you went to the other side and worked on the company side. You saw where data is important, how it can be produced, what clients want. And then you said, aha, I have an idea. And then you go off and start your own company. But that's not exactly what happened. You actually went back into the legal world on the law firm side. Can you just talk a little bit about that? What made you kind of go back, and what eventually then sparked you to start ImmiLytics?
Sure, it's a good question. So when I left Microsoft, that was my goal. And just before I mention that, let me give you some context. So I mentioned about law firms servicing multiple clients, right? From Microsoft's perspective, they have several service providers. So, and there's now consistency in how data is maintained across, because every firm has its own practice. While data is data, nobody's going to overhaul their practice. So I was able to see and said, there's a huge gap in how the data is standardized. And that was the moment for me. It's like, I'm going to take this, go out, standardize this data, not only for these companies, but for the industry. So there is common standards in how some of these data points are mined and used. And I left that. And I started my company right after I left Microsoft. And I'm like, I'm going down this path. So ImmiLytics was founded in 2014 when I left Microsoft. The reason I went back to the law firm environment is the attorney manager that I supported and the firm did not need part-time. I said I would be a consultant. I don't want to come in full-time. But then their need and the expectation was to be a full-time position. So I said, okay, I will come in, but I can't guarantee you that I will stay through forever. And I started developing tools and applications that we wanted to build at ImmiLytics. And then I moved to Fragamin just for a little bit. And I'm glad I did that because that was such great experience personally. And at that point, I said, no, I can't continue being this full-time. I'd like to help my managers and serve them, but at some point, I can't promote my own business for conflict reasons. So in 2018, I resigned. I said, I'm going to focus on my startup. And that's when I went full-time. So given a choice, I would have probably gone back to focusing on ImmiLytics in 2018, but sometimes that was my little give back to my manager and say, okay, I'm going to do it for you, that I'll come full time. And then in 2018, I said, no, I cannot wait any longer. And he understood, and he's like, sure, I support that, and I'm just going to work with you.
So
2018. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna. So it sounds like you in 2014 you really launched ImmiLytics Bootstrapped, right? And then I imagine sort of on the side, which is very often for startup founders, you were like, okay, let me do some consulting for my old boss or some kind of side work to kind of make ends meet. I mean, you have bills to pay, you have kids, you have a home. Was that sort of part of the calculation where, because I think sometimes there's this big question about venture capital, and I know it comes up a lot, and a lot of times venture capital has its pluses and minuses. Obviously, it means that someone buys into your company. There's someone now you have to kind of report to, even though it's your organization. At the same time, you can get an influx of capital, so you can really focus 100% on growing the business, sustaining the business, et cetera. You obviously bootstrapped it. Was there any part of you that thought, all right, I probably should stay in and have one foot in the door to make sure that I'm financially sound? Or was it genuinely like, I'm just going to help these people on a project by project basis, totally outside of ImmiLytics?
No, it was genuine. I wanted to be able to provide the consulting engagement because then you're not locked, right? I can continue to do what I'm doing and still service, whether it's my manager, whether it's the firm, I can still continue to do that. But now with a full-time job, I'm not able to because it's a conflict of interest. I couldn't have talked to another firm and said, hey, by the way, I'm working for firm X and I'm also doing this. Right. Would you want to engage my services? So that was even though it was developing, it was getting in the way of my promoting and focusing on ImmiLytics. And at that point, I decided I had to move on. So it was genuine. I mean, yes, it crossed my mind if I should have the financial security. But I did that in 2018 when I left. So I would have probably been better off if I tried that 2 years earlier rather than 2 years later, because I was probably going to be 2 years more experienced now than I am.
So what you're saying is that when you left Microsoft in 2014 and you launched ImmiLytics, you weren't thinking to yourself, I should get a side job just to help support myself and to kind of have a foot in the door. Cool. That's awesome. And, I asked that because I think it's important for people to, like, if you ask me, I probably left my full-time job too early. I had way too high expectations of what my income was going to be after I started, working on Laborless full-time. And then it ended up being challenging, right? I had to find work and I had to make things happen. And thankfully it worked out. But of course, I always think to myself, I could have stayed for longer and kind of waited for the product to be built out more. And I asked this question because I didn't have anyone to turn to at the time and say, what do you think I should do? I didn't have the people around me, certainly not people in the immigration industry. So I guess the sort of reason for that question was for folks who are listening who might have an idea or maybe are building their idea right now. I've talked to many founders who are like, no, it's moving forward, but I can't make my bills. I can't pay my bills. Right?
Yeah, that's right. On that point though, right? I couldn't have done it if I didn't have the support of my wife. Not to forget that, right? Even though I did not, to date, we are cash rich. I have not taken a penny from outside investors. It's all personal money and work cash positive. But at that point, when I made this decision, it definitely mattered that my wife supported my decision to go out and be on our own. And we had discussed that there's going to be this financial impact. Well, it's not going to be dire, but it's going to change our lifestyle. So yes, thanks to her to have supported me at that point and said, go for it and let's figure it out. If it doesn't work out, we can always come back. And knock on wood, I'm not anticipating going back ever.
And how important is that for you to have somebody, whether it's your spouse or a parent or a friend or something like that? I imagine that that's incredibly important to have someone support you, whether it's financially or just emotionally, because it's not easy and it could be lonely starting your own company.
It is very important because you can fight external negativity, right? If someone says, oh, you're not going to make it, or I don't know how successful it's going to be. But personally, as an entrepreneur, you've got to believe in your product and services and say it's going to happen. The next thing is your family's got to buy into it. And if your family buys into it, that's all matters. So they know whether it's a success or failure, they were part of the decision making and they're making their adjustments as well. So fortunately, my family was behind me and that made it happen. So yes, it is important that you have your family's buy-in to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. And I hope folks take that to heart, whether they're starting a company or whether their loved ones are, to support that endeavor. So
on a fun note, let me mention this. So this gentleman, Jordan, on our tennis team, right? How he motivates us when we're playing, and especially if our team or one of the lines is losing, he'll remind us, guys, do good. It's all for the kids. It's a game, but it's just a reminder that you're doing these things for a purpose, right? And the family is always there. I want to go out, an entrepreneur wants to go out and do something, but you've always got to keep the family commitment and expectation in mind. So it's important that they're part of the decision-making before you go out and say, I'm going to do something on my own.
I think especially if you have children, they're looking up to you, they're depending on you. I mean, 100%. I appreciate that a lot. And I guess in 2018, it sounded like you said, all right, you know what, I'm going to stop doing everything else on the side. It's sort of, and really focus on ImmiLytics full time. I'm curious at that point, where was your business? I think it sounds to me like you were definitely moving in the right direction. You were still doing some of this work on the side for multiple firms. And then you eventually said, I'm done with it. At that point, how was your business doing when you fully said, I'm committing 100%?
So not well at all, because I was just starting out. People don't know or haven't heard of me as an entrepreneur in the market. And they only relate to you with the job that you had. So it was a struggle. But what was encouraging is the thought and the vision. They saw that, okay, this is in the right direction. Things that ImmiLytics has on its roadmap are things that the industry is expecting. So there was encouragement there, while whether they subscribe to what we are building or not, but the fact that they recognize that we're heading in the right direction was encouragement enough for us. And honestly, it was late 2019, mid 2019 and 2020, that was our best years. That's when we really started to see traction, and client referral, boy, they just work just like any other industry. That's your best source of business.
How, I'm curious from a tactical level, what was that first step? I mean, by 2018, you'd been up and running for a few years. But what was like the first step that you got to get your initial clients? I know you had been in the industry already. I'm assuming you would have at least some people you could, call up just because you knew them personally and say, look, here's what I'm working on. What do you think? Was it a lot of that? What did you do to kind of really get the buzz going to get your first few clients? Because that's key. Getting those first few clients to give you money for a service or product that you're providing is really important.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is just like all startups, it was a struggle. And I've heard so many stories on your past shows where it's like getting the first client was so difficult. I literally had to kind of beg for that client, right? But I re-strategized. What I did was I engaged in conversations, and I said, and when we got to a project discussion, I used to tell my clients, let me do it, and let's talk about getting paid after. So what happened was when I gave my product, they liked it, and that's when they decide. Now we see value and we get the next project. And I'll be honest, in 2020 alone, I've written off almost $19,000 worth of time for clients that we have provided services to. So it comes at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, as a startup, you had to build the trust.
Mm-hmm.
Now they know. So that's how difficult it was for us. And it was all through referral that we got clients. And that works because one of my, and as an example, a law firm that we did automation work for, they referred us to a client that is not even in the immigration space. And we ended up building a bot-based automation for high transaction business that they were in. So it was just referral that worked. So our initial clients always is, let's do the work, see the work product. You don't like it, don't pay for it. And that gave us an opportunity to get an understanding of their environment and also point out things that the client could be looking at and improving. So it just became a partnership, a solution partnership, rather than me taking a product or a service and saying, do you want to buy it? Do you want to look at it? So wow. Yeah. It was difficult, but interesting.
It's a bold move, right? Because you, of course, are spending your time and effort actually building this thing as if you're getting paid for it, and you technically aren't sure. But to your point, I mean, it goes to show for sure that they can trust you, but also I think it shows that you're serious, and that you're not just selling fluff and then who knows what you're going to deliver after they've paid you. You're saying, forget about that. Let me give you the most value that I possibly can, and then let's talk about what that looks like and what that means like for you. That's really cool. I mean, that's not a strategy that I've really heard so far. It reminds me, to me, it's a parallel of like the freemium model where a software SaaS platform, for example, says, look, here's X amount of features, just take it for free. And once you realize the value that it gives you, you can probably have reason to upgrade. But this wasn't the case. You're building a bespoke solution for a client, I guess, at least in this instance you're sharing with me. And then going to them and saying, what do you think? Right? Crazy. Very crazy.
I know it is, but it's worth. When you get the project and you get more work, you see you're building a partnership and trust, which is very important in the kind of business that we are in.
I respect that a lot. So I guess, at this point, we're talking about ImmiLytics, and I think some of the folks might be interested to hear from you. What is ImmiLytics? Like, what do you do? I mean, the name seems like it might provide an answer, but data and analytics are such broad topics. What do you actually do, and what problem are you solving within the immigration industry?
Sure. So ImmiLytics broadly provides two kinds of services. And our core service is reporting and data analytics. And as we know, data is at the heart of automation, which everybody is heading towards. So we focus mostly on data and analytics and use the same data to set our clients up towards an automation roadmap. So those are broadly two categories of services that we offer. Within the data reporting and data analytics, we offer what's called turnkey basis reporting services. And I'll tell you why. The biggest challenge the industry has today is law firms and companies not having access to their full data. It is all application level reporting today. And other than large firms like that have their own case management system, then they have their database. But if anybody is using a third-party tool, they either don't have access to their database, which is their own data, or they just can't afford to get that at that cost. So they're relying on application level reporting. And what that means is, if you need a report, you've got to run it from an application. If you need more data, then more reports, combining them all together and trying to get to one report is not only time consuming, but cumbersome and never consistent. And having this 20 years of immigration experience and the passion for data, ImmiLytics knows what those standard operational reports are and how to bring them together. And we automate that and we deliver an end product to our clients. So that is on a monthly basis. So we have clients coming to us and say, we don't want to do this document expiration reports, which is not only cumbersome running, but reviewing them. So we put that report together and provide it to our clients. And then you can extrapolate this to the other reports. The second piece is the analytics side, which is how many cases have we filed? How many filings have we, how many cases have we initiated? How many have we filed? What is the turnaround time between each of our cases? And then annual reviews, business annual reviews. Like firms have annual reviews with their clients. So putting that package together, giving them the insight as to what metrics will be the best based on your clients. Those are the kinds of services we provide from data analytics side. And the analytics is at two levels. One is an overview, just to kind of get a sense of where your business is. And for those that are interested in taking a deep dive, nitty-gritties to improve their processes, we provide deep dive analytics to them. So now coming back to the application level reporting, right? That being the biggest challenge, ImmiLytics is focused on understanding our clients' needs. And given that there are multiple systems, case management system is only one system you get your information from. Then there's your billing system. And then now with all these new and upcoming technologies that you plug and play their own database, data from that system, it just gets complex. ImmiLytics is geared to handle that and build a custom database for the firm that they have so much power in using the data the way they want. So that is the data analytics and reporting side. And there are some dashboards online. You can look at it. We've done some custom dashboards, and I'm happy to demo anybody who's interested in. So that's service one. In terms of automation, ImmiLytics is focused on pure code-based and bot-based automation. And what I mean by that is we have two sets of clients. Clients that are technically savvy and want to head in the direction where they're building their digital workforce. And therefore, we're helping them build a workforce around using bots and automating processes. And on the other side, we have firms that are not interested in going to automation yet, or don't have the bandwidth to do that right now. So it's pure code-based automation. As an example, we have a H1B petition drafting tool that we built as an automation tool that's available. That will prepare H1B petitions and put the package together in under 44 seconds. It's all automated. So we built the framework of what's needed. We just customize it to each client's environment, and bang, you have automation. Another example that's manual kind of work is your I-94 CBP data retrieval tool. Today, there are programs that will scrape data from sites and give you information. But who's to do the analysis on if somebody's I-94 status has expired, if somebody's I-94 status was recorded incorrectly in the CBP system? That's the logic that ImmiLytics brings and builds. So now in a single click, we're able to pull that information, audit that information, and provide insights for hundreds of records. And you can just forget it after you run it. It just does its work.
The question about the platform level kind of analytics for your first service, I guess it sounds like what you're saying is, all right, immigration law firms and immigration teams, like you said, they have multiple systems that they work with, the case management or forms management. They've got billing, maybe they've got some kind of an invoicing thing, whatever. So you layer on top of those, I guess, and you provide them with some kind of a higher level analytic analysis that allows them to see everything in one place in a more, I guess, coherent fashion. But one of the things that you noted was that a challenge that companies have now is they just can't access their full database because it's stored not on their computers or not in their cloud, but on the case management platform cloud or the billing software cloud. Does ImmiLytics sort of feed into those databases and pull from them? Or how do you dive into the data that all of these disparate systems, have?
So we understand clients' needs and all the data sources. And then we get to the technical integration side. How are you able to connect to those data sources? Is it the traditional run a report, merge them together, manual type, or you're accessing it through APIs? Once we figure that out, all we are doing is building the data model that a client needs for whatever their data analytics needs are. And we turn the database over to the clients, establish the connections. At that point, it's in their environment. We're just providing that service and the knowledge of connecting these various systems. Because billing system as an example, right? You have information in a case management system. How is that information transpired into the billing system? Today it's manual. And APIs don't exist to take information from one system to another. We create the platform and talk to our clients in terms of how you can import the data, what are the parameters needed to connect the two data sources, and establish a common single report that will generate, giving you all of the metrics needed. So we build the architecture, the solution around it, and not that we build our own, we don't have a database sitting on top of theirs. It's the architecture that we build, the solution that we provide in terms of connecting it, and we turn it over to their internal team to manage it. Unless the client says, no, we don't have an internal team, which is where ImmiLytics is helpful. Like, they don't have an internal team. They want us to do it. Then we provide a cloud service where in a secure environment, we build their database, give them access to it, and all of it resides there.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So you're building the architecture to help them connect all their different systems, and then not just connect them, but make sense out of what's happening in all those systems. We had a question here earlier from Stephanie. Whoops. How has the pandemic affected the way you do business today? I mean, you said 2020 was actually a pretty good year for you. What did you see in terms of the COVID-19 and work from home and the shift towards more technology? How has that impacted or benefited, I suppose, ImmiLytics?
Good question, Stephanie. Love it. It actually helped us, and here's why. With the whole remote access and immigration being paper heavy, not everybody is already digital ready, right? And then there are a lot of manual work that had to be done by admin staff that are physically present in offices to do that. Now that has to be done by someone. So all these tools, automated tools that ImmiLytics builds, is based on operational challenges that firms face today. And we receive business that would otherwise would have been done manually through automation. So give you an example. Say a firm wanted to update 3,000 records, and somebody had to be physically present in the office to do that. We were able to automate the process using a bot and just run it through a bot and just improve our business. So you don't have to physically be to access that information. So the pandemic definitely helped us in so many ways. And our business just improved because they physically cannot be there. Receipt notices are another good example, right? Receipt notices come in throughout the week. How do you update all that information, whether it's the case management system, whether you move it to a file location? We build these automated tools that will, using OCR technology, read, update the information where it has to be updated, refile the documents where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, those are physically done by individuals that are present in the office.
And just to clarify, OCR technology, optical character recognition, basically what it means is you can upload an image and it will scan the image and read the words and make actions based on those words, which is really cool. I mean, that's a really, to some extent, you can't help the paper thing because that's on the government. Until they allow e-filing, we can build all the best technology in the world, but they'll still have to send the thing to print and send it into in an envelope. And then likewise, if we continue to receive receipt notices and other documentation on paper, there's not much you can do there. But to what you're saying, at the very least, we can now leverage technology to read those notices and take actions based on that. That's super cool. Another question here from Nathaniel, who asks, do you see machine learning and AI playing a role in the analytics side of your work so far? And specifically about, how much of the RFE response can be automated with all the analytics provided by ImmiLytics?
Good question. Yes, machine learning and AI is definitely going to play a huge role in how data is going to be used. Just giving an example of an extension, could be any extension, right? Think of it, a client has initiated an extension and said, do this paperwork. The traditional way of doing things today is you would go to a folder, print the last documents, look at all the documents, go to your case management system, look at all the data there, and then make an initial assessment, and then you get back to the client. Instead, through AI and machine learning, the moment you say this is an extension and this is an extension for this type of a case, your algorithms and the artificial intelligence is processing. So for this case, I know what I'm supposed to do, like a paralegal or an attorney would do. I'm going to gather all that information together and present it to someone that will still review it, but it takes the legwork away through AI.
So it would decrease the time spent. I mean, there's still someone making a final assessment before they get back. But in the beginning, it's like, here are the different parameters. Maybe the AI makes a recommendation or presents things in a nice fashion. So I guess to Nathaniel's question, it would speed up the response time to prospective extension or whatever the case might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it really feeds into my, kind of the questions that I really like to ask towards the end here of guests is, where do you see the future of the industry going? I mean, you're operating and ImmiLytics is operating in a sense, regardless of what happens in the industry, because people could, immigration technology could bloom in all different niches and subsections of immigration. What you're doing is you're gathering all that data and creating some sort of, logic and sense around it, I suppose. But where do you see the future of the industry? I mean, do you see it in more baked in analytics on existing platforms? Do you see other platforms popping up that we can't even think about? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
So from our experience and looking at the way technology is growing, we believe that the firms are going to start building their own system. And here's why. Not because the existing systems have or don't have the required features. It, in fact, has more features than what's needed. But what it doesn't address in all situations is it doesn't give me what I need. So we're seeing clients come to us and say, well, you are doing automation. What can you automate for us? And then we use the analytics piece to understand their business and tell them, you don't need a full-blown system and automation for a full system. Instead, look at your important work streams, project your future, look at what you need to automate, and ImmiLytics has a platform that we will create that anybody can use, and you can custom build your solution. So let's take a case management system module. You have certain fixed modules, like there's a questionnaire module, forms module, contact management, and then finally data, right? I don't need that system to be able to automate. Today, there are so many systems that are available. I can choose Clio as an example for my practice management system. I could use a third-party forms. When I mean forms, I mean questionnaires. I can use a third-party, more robust questionnaires that are constantly evolving as far as UI goes, plug into that system. I could go into a third system, into a fourth system, get what I need from an automation standpoint, and still get my job done. So there's going to be less and less reliance on a full-blown product. Instead, we go the solution approach. And I think that's going to be the future, where everybody deserves to have automation, be efficient, but I don't want to be waiting for a software to appear that will address everybody's needs. Instead, I want to take bits and pieces of what I can automate, take it there and just automate it. As an example, a client that we're working right now and we're delivering a product pretty soon, they are doing all kinds of cases, but they just wanted to automate 2 or 3 of their case types. And the platform we built on top of it just addresses that. You take processes 1, 2, and 3, and they're automating it today. Now they can gradually grow. Tomorrow they could add a 4th process, a 5th process, and they can just continue to automate, but they don't need to have a full system to do that. So personally, and our belief is that, yes, there's going to be less and less reliance on having one full-blown system. Instead, rely on all these new technologies that you can integrate with easily, and then integrate out of if it doesn't work. And that's one thing I will leave away anybody that's listening here is, make sure you have good data. The first questions you ask before you try any new system is, how easy is it to plug my data into your system and get out of your system? Because if things don't work, you want to be able to take your data back in a fashion that you can plug into another system. So have your data in order, ask these questions, you'll be fine as far as trying out all these new products, because you don't have to wait or enhance technologies. Just look for the product that best fits your need, plug into it, and then you're on from there.
You heard it here first, folks. I love it. Where do you see, given this, where do you see ImmiLytics fitting into this category? I mean, it sounds like you're kind of explaining that there's going to be, or what you're seeing is sort of a modular approach where, law firms just take what they need and maybe they can build, or companies, they build on top of it afterwards. Maybe they can scale back, it's a really kind of, it sounds flexible. That also sounds, I guess, complicated to me, but maybe not. Maybe it's even easier. Where do you see, I guess, ImmiLytics fitting into this future state?
One of the challenges that any firm that has multiple projects, right, is prioritization. Everything is required, needed, everything I needed today, but practically it's not possible for the tech team to deliver at that pace, right? So then you start prioritizing what you need to deliver. So for firms in that position, ImmiLytics is going to be an extension of the work that they are unable to do, but because of the technology and knowledge, we're able to deliver and turn it to the market faster. So that's the one approach as far as the large firms. For the mid-tier and smaller firms that deserve and should be looking at automation, but cannot afford to have a full-time tech person or a full-time data analytics person, you look at ImmiLytics as being an extension where we are delivering this to you at low cost. So what ImmiLytics is going to be doing is creating this generic platform where you will use our platform, but easily customize it to your needs. That's as far as the tech goes. Reporting, in the next quarter, ImmiLytics is going to come up with its own reporting portal where folks that cannot afford to have a data analytics person, all we're going to tell you is build a data model for you and have you upload your own data, bring your own data, and the templates will generate. So for somebody that's not fancy, doesn't need deep dive analytics, but I do want some analytics, that platform is going to be available. So that's how we see ourselves plugging in terms of helping firms get to what it's going to be custom solution build rather than someone having to go try a new provider out there. And I don't think, knock on wood, I don't think there's anybody out there today that provides custom solution build. It's straight up product companies and not a service company. So ImmiLytics' model is based on provide solutions needed by clients, but in a partnership service type model.
It's really interesting. What advice or sort of what thoughts would you give to, I mean, if you can say the future generation or the next generation of immigration technology, founders, given what you're seeing? I mean, where do you think, like you and I and everyone, we'd love to all solve all the problems, but we have to at some point concentrate on what we're doing. Where would you say, hey, if you're interested in immigration technology, maybe you're in the industry and you want to play with the tech side, what do you think are sort of the next frontiers of the industry where people should focus their energy?
Don't get a product out of sheer competition, right? Somebody else has got it. We need to have it. Get away from that mentality. I've seen firms do that. By the way, the other firm is doing this. Should we also do that? You don't know that they're identical in terms of their operations, right? So you don't want to jump to a product like that. First, define what you need. And if it's a need or it's a nice to have, if it's a must have or a nice to have, start looking at automation from that aspect and stay automation, because the industry is changing. Slowly but steadily, everybody's going to be faster to market services. So if you're new and upcoming young crowd, look for technology, stay technologically savvy. You won't be successful always. You'll fail on some of your pilot, but do a long pilot project and just get technology. That's it.
Just technology.
Right.
I love it. Yeah.
I mentioned, right, when I came here, I did not have tech background. 20 years later, I'm talking tech. And I'm not an IT guy for crying out loud. So challenge yourself, understand your expectation, and serve to the needs you have. You'll be fine.
I love that. I appreciate that because I think there's, you know, this idea of upskilling or reskilling. Immigration lawyers can do it, paralegals can do it, anybody in the industry can become much more tech savvy by learning from people like you, and in general, just playing around with different products out there. Um, I wanted to just, you know, maybe end with one question here. It kind of sounds like, you know, your career has been, looking back on it, it makes so much sense in the world. I mean, you there were some lucky breaks where you got that job. You know, you were finding something for your wife, and then it turned around that they needed your help, right? You got that person who set you up with the subsequent job at the staffing firm. You know, you built great relationships and worked really hard and moved around from law firm to in-house positions. You know, what do you think was the biggest challenge that you've had? And I asked this question because I think challenges where we learn the most from other people. And it sounds like a lot of things have gone pretty swimmingly, but there, you know, probably are times where things have maybe gone down, at least for a little bit, before they went back up. So I don't know, what was the kind of a memorable challenge that maybe you had throughout your career that you really feel got you to where you are today?
Boy, of course, every position, everything that I did has had its own challenges, right? But then I'll tell you the one that really uh, is when I started and I was building all this, just like any entrepreneur, everything was like, oh, this is going to be something folks will use. This is going to be successful. It's going to take off. But that's not true. And it's not true because what we have is not good or cannot be used. It is just that clients or users don't see it as a need. In the example I gave you, you could have features that are best and absolutely needed, but if it's not my need today, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to purchase it. You're not going to subscribe to it, which is why our model has shifted in saying we will continue to build these tools for folks that want to use it, but we're going to focus on what our clients need and build client-specific solution. So that was that was a challenge, and that was a learning from the challenges. So yes, it's exciting to build these things, but more importantly, address pain points. And if it's a pain point to one person, obviously it's got to be a pain point to another in some fashion or somewhere close, because it's all related and standard procedures when it comes to immigration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was a challenge for us to build stuff, continue to build stuff, and realize that folks are not going to use it like we thought, and that easily.
I you know, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing that. It's tough because you don't want to spend a lot of resources building things without really knowing, but then sometimes you think, well, if I build it, they will come, and so there's always the challenge of those two. And I think there's definitely a need for this kind of modularity, if you will, or this kind of bespoke development. I mean, there's the industry, I think, is underserved in many ways, and it feels to me like, you know, what you've built and with ImmiLytics, it's providing a service for many firms that don't have something that they want in the market right now.
Right, and you know, you're a tech entrepreneur. You know, yeah. I'm sure there are a bunch of products that you started and are by the wayside now, because yes, it was a good idea at that point. It's not any longer. So yeah, we just do that. But what comes out of it is the learning, right? And that's how we look at it. Anything that we do, if we didn't sell it like we thought it would, it's a learning, something we learned out of it.
100%, 100%.
And before, I guess we're done. I just wanted to thank all of our clients, ImmiLytics' clients, for having trusted us and given us the opportunity to work with you, especially in a startup. It's difficult. And we're glad that we had the opportunity, and we will continue to do what we can to grow your business.
I love that. And for other folks, where can they reach you? How can they reach you?
So they can reach me on LinkedIn, Shiv CS, our website. They can reach me at info@immilytics.com. And the number you see on my website is my cell phone number.
Wow.
So you're not going to go through layers. You just come directly to me, and I'm available pretty much 24/7.
Oh boy, you're going to start getting text messages in the middle of the night, Shiv. Like, what do you think about this dashboard? What do you think about these data?
I hope, Roman, you know, that's a better problem to have than be worrying, you know, what happened here? I thought we were okay. No, I'm ready. ready to take on the challenge.
I love it. Well, Shiv, thank you so much for joining. This was such a pleasure. And I think I learned a lot, and I think everyone learned a lot. And I'm super excited for you and the growth of ImmiLytics, and frankly, the growth for the entire industry. So thank you for spending the time and for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and great show. And I'm going to continue. I promise I'm not going to drop off. I'm going to continue to watch this until you run the show.
I'm holding you to it. I'm holding you to it. All right. Thank you, Shiv.
All right. Thank you, Roman. Bye.
Well, that was an awesome episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I think on the ImmiLytics website on the very front, it says data is the new oil. And if there's anything you can learn from that, I think it's the idea that the more data we collect and how we report on it, the better we can make this industry. And ultimately, of course, the better we can make the immigration process in general. So thank you all so much for joining. As always, have an amazing weekend. Have a great rest of your Friday. See you next week, and stay safe. Peace out.